You see, the crowd had gone to great lengths to find Jesus. They searched for him. They did some detective work to figure out the disciples went across the sea, and they decided to follow the disciples. But their reason for following him was not out of devotion. It was because they wanted what he had to provide. They wanted more bread and more miracles. But Jesus told them, listen, you have to believe in me. You're searching for bread, and he responded, I am the bread of life. And yet their response was, well, show us another sign. How quickly they had forgotten, right? Just the day before, God had filled their stomachs through miraculous provision. I also think that they probably knew that Jesus somehow got to Capernaum by a miraculous way. And yet they still want more. They want more proof, more signs. Their focus was on what was being provided and not who was providing it. And even then, even if they decided to say, okay, well, somebody is providing it, just like they look back to their ancestors, they gave Moses the credit for providing the manna and not God. But Jesus reminds them, listen, just as Israel's bodies were sustained by manna, I am now going to offer you bread for your soul, and that bread is me, and they still refuse to believe. I think it can be pretty easy to sit in judgment of the crowd, right? They've got Jesus standing in front of them. They've seen miracles. I'm sure many of them have seen more than just the feeding of the 5,000 plus, right? They've seen things, they've heard of the things that he's doing, and they still don't believe. They have their eyes on what he's providing and not on him. See, God often uses miracles, like really big things and also everyday miracles, in order to draw our attention to him and to make our eyes look upon him. I had a friend who grew up in a Christian home, and she went away to a Christian college, and she decided to walk away from her faith there. She decided that Jesus wasn't for her. She didn't believe that it was true anymore, but she was surrounded by Christian friends still. And so almost in spite, she had this moment where she's like, you know what, God, if you're real, if you want me to believe in you, then you're going to have to show me a sign. And then after that, she was going to be done. And what ended up happening is she gets into her friend's car, and a song starts playing on the radio. And through that song, she felt so much conviction, more conviction than she's felt since she was a little kid. And she felt so pierced in her soul that she knew that God was real. And when she's telling me this story, she's like, listen, it wasn't about the radio that was on the song that was on the radio. It had nothing to do with the song. But the fact that Jesus, that God met me right where I was in that moment, that he drew my eyes to look up to him. And that's what we're talking about here. This idea that God is doing things in our lives that are meant to draw our eyes toward him. And so let me ask you, are you more focused on what God wants to provide than on the provider himself? Or what you want God to provide than on the provider himself? Are your eyes on the miracle rather than the one who exists beyond space and time? Right? God who can provide amazing things for you and provide for your needs as well, who exists outside of all things we can comprehend. Which one deserves more worship? Are you simply a fan of Jesus, or are you a true follower?